All right, on this Wednesday, we begin a radio.com show with a little something different. We have all the craziness going on in baseball. We have the NFL championship games coming up Sunday, but it's not too early to turn our attention to golf because the mainland is back in action. They have the Amex this week at La Quinta, so after that, you have Torrey Pines coming up, and then, of course, the craziness in Phoenix that always coincides with the Super Bowl, and then they'll swing to Florida, and before you know it, you've already seen the commercials. Augusta will be right around the corner, so time to kind of preview what's going on this year in golf. We've stayed away from golf for a little while. Time to get back acquainted, and to do that, we bring in the guy who you hear on Sirius all the time with his show there. He's in Golf Digest. He's one of the top teaching pros in the country, et cetera, and that's Michael Breed. Mike, welcome. How are you?
I couldn't be better, Mike. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. Happy New Year to you. All right. First thing I saw was the headline that they're going to stress and they're going to go out of their way to make sure that players pay attention to pace of play. How much should we believe that?
Well, I think it's a big issue. I mean, we look at what the European Tour has done. They've had a tournament called the Shot Clock Masters, where people were limited to a certain amount of time, and they actually had clocks with each group. I think it's going to be something that is imperative for players to pay attention to. The fines are going to be very, very hefty. And I think this is something that the Tour is really concerned with. It just seems to come to light at the end of an event on a Saturday or Sunday. They don't have, the producer doesn't have the time to be able to go to varying shots all over the golf course. You basically got 2 or 3 groups left on the golf course. Last week, I know it was rainy out there in Hawaii, and I know they had a little bit of a difficult time, but it took 41 minutes for the final threesome to play the final hole. And a combination of a lot of things, but that's a turn it off type scenario. And I think that the Tour has had enough of that. They have to pay attention to it. And I believe that they are going to pay attention to it. Zach Johnson was very, very happy with the changes that they've made and the steps that they're taking, and I think it'll only get better.
All right. Now, we know there's some notoriously slow players. Now, you had an era where Nicklaus was a slow player, a really slow player. And we all know how slow Spieth is and Furyk, Holmes. Last year, you had Brooks Koepka calling out Holmes, and rightly so. And I understand you get a fast player with a slow player, and it drives the fast player crazy. So these guys have to be cognizant of it. But explain to me this. How hard is it for a guy who is a slow routine player to change his game?
Well, it's an interesting thing because Jordan Spieth is a guy who they showed him a video of his of what he did in an event a few years ago, and the amount of time that it took him. And they time all these players. I mean, with ShotLink data and everything like that, they know exactly how long every single player is taking to hit a shot. He was 185th on the PGA Tour in pace of play. He was embarrassed by it, disgusted with it, and he changed it. And this year, he was 65th in pace of play. Now, that's not the fastest player on tour, but it certainly isn't the slowest player on tour, which he was close to that. I think what the Tour is trying to do is not embarrass the players, but just trying to highlight to them, you know what, you've got to play within a certain period of time. If you look at what happens in all other sports, and let's exclude hockey for just a second where there is no shot clock, but football has a shot clock, basketball has a shot clock, baseball has a clock. Everybody's got a clock. Even tennis has an amount of time that you have to get the serve off. And it's something that you saw the change that baseball made last year with the intentional walk, where they just said, okay, go to first base. So everybody's aware of it. The mindset that people are dealing with the viewer now is completely different. And if PGA Tour and golf as a whole is going to grow, and it's trying to, the addition of the Olympics and everything like that, it's trying to. You can't sell the sport by watching somebody walk up and down a piece of property for 4.5 minutes and go, this is scintillating athletic specimen. This is not the way it is. It's got to change, and they are changing it, and it will get better and better and better.
Now, keeping the flag in on putts, what I notice, at least when we play, most of the guys have gotten used to keeping it in, but I have to admit, here's how I do it. If I'm putting a long putt, it's in. But if I'm trying to make an 8-footer, I still take it out. I don't like it in when it's just a mental block. I don't like it in when it's inside 10 feet. What have the players acclimated themselves to leaving the pin in?
I think there are some players like an Adam Scott who likes having the flag in regardless of the distance. And I think that there are some players who have tried to turn it into some sort of a study, like a Bryson DeChambeau, who does very much what you do on longer putts. He's got the flag out, and shorter putts the flag is in on longer putts and out on shorter putts. And I think there are some people that just don't care. Tiger Woods, the flag is coming out. So I think it was something to talk about. It was a novelty, just like the drop was, it was different. But I think everybody's pretty much gotten used to it, and they do whatever they do. And I don't think that it's really a topic of conversation. It's way more something that the amateur player is dealing with. And I don't think out on the PGA Tour these players are so much concerned with that flag being in or being out. There's a handful that have really done some studying on it.
All right, we're talking with Michael Breed, of course, Golf Digest Sirius, as we've talked about, and we look at this new golf year. Before I get to the individual guys and what you expect from certain guys, new class of stars. You're always good at giving us the new guys, the hot guys. You were the first one to mention Brooks Koepka. You mentioned Brooks Koepka before he took off. You did. You gave us Willett to win the Masters years ago. So you are very good at pinpointing these young guys. Who's your guys right now? Who are the new faces on the tour for 2020?
Well, I think, listen, Matt Wolff, Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, Joaquin Niemann, those four guys are guys that we're all very aware of. They 3 of the 4 won last year. 1 actually picked up a win this year. Joaquin Niemann got his win. Victor Hovland hasn't broken through yet, but he comes in to this. He played his way onto the tour without winning, which, quite frankly, is not necessarily an easy thing to do. He did that. I think those 4 are sort of your staple players. The guy who really impressed me last year, and he did it when we were out at the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. I had the chance to cover Tiger Woods for 3 of the 4 rounds that he played, and he played with a guy named Ben An. Now, Ben's not necessarily a young guy. He's 28 years of age,
right?
But he's not a guy who a lot of people are very familiar with. This is a guy who impressed me with all facets of the game, and particularly where I saw Ben playing with Tiger Woods is not an easy thing to do. I don't care whether he's playing great or not playing well. It is not an easy thing to do. Everybody wants to see him. He is the spectacle. He is the straw. He is the man. And I watched Ben An stay composed, hit great shots, great short shots. He is a guy who completely impressed me. When I see what this guy did, 2019, nice year, made almost $2 million, 55th on the money list. He's got all the things that you would expect out of a PGA Tour player, a PGA Tour winner. I think that this is a guy who I've got my eye on. I think he makes sort of the next level jump this year. Ben An's the guy.
A lot of people picking him this week, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, a lot of people like him, and they like his demeanor. He's comfortable out there. I'm big on Ben An this year, and I have been since watching him out at the U.S. Open last year.
How do you feel about Wolff's game?
So Matthew Wolff is an interesting guy to me because I think much like Jim Furyk in that they don't really have similar swings, although they look different than everybody else.
Right.
But when you have a swing that is different from people, you have to have an internal belief in what you're doing, and Matthew Wolff has that. He's got all the speed. He's got all the mental fortitude that you need. And I think this is a guy who's going to have a very, very nice career on the PGA Tour. The problem that I see with Matthew is that his swing is unconventional in that, and this is where you get a little into the weeds, but every single swing has forearm rotation in it. So if you're a right-handed player and you make a backswing, the left forearm is going to rotate in a clockwise fashion. That happens for all players. Well, Matthew doesn't do that. He actually drops down, creates a lot of lift in his arms, and all of his forearm rotation is happening as he starts the downswing. And I think over time, it's going to be an issue of injury. I think what's going to happen is the stress that he's putting on his body with that kind of violent rotation that way, and then try to re-rotate it in an opposite direction, is going to create some injury. I think also too, he has a little bit more side bend in a swing than I prefer. And so what I worry about for him, and I worry about the same thing for Joaquin Niemann, who has a tremendous amount of side bend. Side bend is when your right shoulder bends towards your right knee. And that happens as you come down into a strike and ultimately hit the ball. That side bend is a violent move in a golf swing. And the more of it you have, the more damage you do to the back, and the more damage or potential damage you do to the lead knee, the left knee. We've seen a lot of left knee injuries. Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, even Tiger Woods, who struggled with his left knee through his career, had some what they call, and I forget even the word, the normal surgery on the left knee. He had, it's kind of routine surgery on his left knee this off season. Now, anytime you're doing surgery, I don't care, it's never routine. So I worry about injury, and Matthew Wolff is a very talented player, no doubt. I just worry about injury for Matthew, and I think that affects his longevity.
You know, we have waited for certain guys. Before we get to the royalty, we have waited for certain guys. You mentioned DeChambeau, who people have waited for him to explode. Rickie Fowler, of course, is the next guy everyone's waited for. He continues to disappoint in terms of winning big crowns or winning majors or winning big tournaments. Which guys under the big stars? And, you know, we got Tiger. We have an aging Phil. We have Tiger. We have, obviously, what Spieth has accomplished. You have Koepka, who is dominant right now. You have Rory. We know the guys you have at the top of the sport. Underneath those guys, what guy do you see who you think is ready to emerge into a – I mean, I even put Justin Thomas is there. We can name all those guys. Who's ready to emerge as the next guy who's a standard, a guy you expect to be there each and every week?
Well, I'll say this name and you'll go, yeah, absolutely. This is a guy who, believe it or not, he's number 3 in the world right now. Right. But a lot of people just forget about him. Is Jon Rahm. And Jon Rahm, let's forget.
That's who my wife loves. She loves Rahm. She loves Rahm. And he's got to calm his temper down.
And I think the situation that happened for him last year at the Players' Championship, which is about a year ago, 10 months ago, and in a situation in the final day where he's on the 11th hole in a fairway bunker on a par 5, and he's trying to hook a shot to a back right hole location out of this fairway bunker, hits it in the water, goes on, loses the event. And I think that one moment was an incredibly important and career-altering moment for Jon Rahm. And I think what you're going to see with Jon Rahm, and Dave Phillips, his coach, is a good friend of mine. I spent a little time talking with Dave earlier this season, at the end of last year, but earlier this wraparound season. And he said that there have been a lot of big changes for Jon Rahm. He's physically in great shape. He doesn't have a golf swing that torques the body very much. It's a very powerful motion. He's constantly working on, and they do an assessment on his body every single week. On Monday of every week, they assess his body to try to avoid injury, which nobody else is doing out on the PGA Tour. And you start to look at this, and you look at the changes that he's making, and I expect Jon Rahm to win a major this year. I expect him to certainly contend in a lot of events, and I expect him to be – his mindset right now is, I can be number 1 player in the world. And I think he's taken a quantum shift from last year to this year. Be on the lookout for Jon Rahm. Now, at the same time, you mentioned Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas gets the big win in Hawaii to start this 2020 year. And I think that Justin Thomas is another guy who we expect to be a mainstay. He's literally on the brink of a Hall of Fame career right now. He wins another major, and he's a Hall of Famer. And I there's no doubt he'll win another major, and he could be a guy that contends and possibly wins the major this year. Those two players are guys that I'm looking for. And what's interesting,
let me give you 3 other guys who I think you could be into that group. Fleetwood is number 1.
So I knew you were going to ask me about Tom Fleetwood. I know how the Fleetwood affection at the
well, he's a
at
beautiful ball striker. He hits the ball to the tee. He gets hotter than hot. He flies the ball to the pin about as well as anybody in the sport. Hits majestic shots, and then he just gets hot and cold with the putter.
Well, the problem is that he doesn't show up on Sunday. That's the problem. Now, I can tell you he shows up on Sunday when he really doesn't have a great chance. But if you look at what happened with him last year, and let's take the Arnold Palmer Invitational. He shoots 76 on Saturday, plays his way out of the tournament, shoots 68 when it doesn't really matter, ends up tied third. He shoots 73 at the Players. That whole week, he was either tied for the lead or a shot back, and 73 in his final round. At the Masters, 74 on Sunday. At the PGA Championship, 78 on Sunday. At the U.S. Open, 73-73. At the Open Championship, he's 4 shots back of Shane Lowry. He needs the weather to be bad. The weather is bad. Shane Lowry goes out and shoots 72. What does Fleetwood do? 74. I just look at this guy. He has to, in order for Tommy to do what we expect. And you're right. He had a full year. He played 18 tournaments on the PGA Tour. He finished it. He never missed a cut. Finished inside the top.
And he can shoot 62.
But he can also shoot 78. And
right.
The problem is not how low you can go. It's how high you go. And when you're shooting 76 on a Saturday and 78 on a Sunday, it's very difficult for you to win a tournament. And I will tell you this about the game of golf, and this is different than other sports. The game of golf is about how bad you are when you're bad, not how good you are when you're good.
Good point.
And you can play
and you got to be
yourself
able to close. And you have to be able to close.
You have to be able to close.
Yep.
You have to be able to close. And he hasn't shown that yet. I'm hoping for him to do
that's fair.
In the game of golf. But he can't close.
That's fair. Now, 2 other guys who are right there. Cantlay is close. He's very close. He could become a big star.
Patrick Cantlay is a guy who, like John Rahm, Patrick Cantlay to me is a guy who's on the verge of taking the next step. And the next step for me with Patrick Cantlay is he has to start winning with regularity. When you look at a Patrick Cantlay, there's not a weakness in his game. He's an immensely talented guy. And what I love about Cantlay is he has that mindset. You look at his statistics. Statistics are fantastic. He's a great ball striker, wonderful putter, great short game, 6th on tour last year in strokes gained around the green. He's a guy who needs to make this next step. A ton of seconds, a ton of top 10s. He's got to start to win. He got the win last year. He got it at the Memorial. That was a big deal. And again, 64 on Sunday. He's got to start winning with regularity. I'm hoping that Patrick Cantlay has a multiple win season this year. I get that out of Patrick. He makes that next step, and all of a sudden, we're good to go.
How about Schauffele?
Xander Schauffele, to me, is a wonderful, wonderful conversation because what I love about Schauffele is he doesn't do anything that you go – he's not a wow guy. It's not like a Rory McIlroy where he's making these enormously beautiful, majestic swings. He's not making bombs of putts like Jordan Spieth did in 15, 16. He's not one of those guys. But at the same time, he's always there. And Schauffele, to me, is another guy like Patrick Cantlay. I think the experiences that he's going to gain by playing in President's Cups, playing in Ryder Cups, I think that's going to have a big effect on what he does and how he performs this year. I expect him to have another good season. He's going to be a mainstay. I think he's going to be a mainstay in these cups that he's going to play in. And one of the cool things this year with the Olympics, Xander Schauffele is right there in the official World Golf Rankings. He's 8th right now. In order for him to get into the Olympics, he has to bypass Tiger Woods and Patrick Cantlay. If he gets to that point, now all of a sudden he gets into the Olympics. And I think these types of events, we've seen what the Olympics did for Justin Rose. We have seen what the Olympics have done for Matt Kuchar. If he gets himself into the Olympics, I think that's a huge lift for Xander Schauffele. And if as he goes in the first, let's just say the first 4 or 5 months of this year, we'll find out, what he's capable of doing and how he does in the Olympics.
We're talking with Michael Breed, previewing the 2020 golf season. Before I get to the big guys, one more, and that's Fowler. When, if ever, do we stop talking about Rickie breaking through and forget about it? Because let's be honest, we know how likable he is. We know everybody loves him. He's friends with everybody. He parties with everybody. He also can make a putt from anywhere at any time. He's got the perfect putting stroke within 10 feet. He looks like a guy who should win from here to eternity. He doesn't win. He doesn't win. Now, he can make a great living. He could be this generation's Fred Couples, where Freddie did win some tournaments, and Freddie, was incredibly popular. Rickie's incredibly popular, but he hasn't even won as much as Freddie. How about Fowler starting to, win a Masters, win some big tournaments, win a U.S. Open? I mean, when is it going to happen for this guy? Or maybe it's not going to happen for him.
Rickie Fowler is a guy, to me, he's getting incredibly close to Anna Kournikova. That's what I kind of feel like. I think he is dangerously close to that best player to not win a major. I mean, he's 31 years of age. He's been out on tour for a long time now. He's had all the experience you need to have, but he has not had the career, certainly to this point, that we have expected. And
here's where the modern tour kills a guy like Fowler's competitiveness. He can make a fortune doing what he's doing right now and never win a tournament. I mean, because he's Rickie Fowler, because he makes a ton of endorsements. The people love him. They're going to pay him for commercials. He gets everything because he's so likable. Everyone loves him. He's good looking. The girls like him. The young kids like him. But he never wins.
So let's not forget, he won the Waste Management Phoenix Open last year, despite shooting 74 on Sunday. We remember that famous situation where he dropped the ball after hitting it into the water. Go look at the shot, and his ball, which had come to rest, all of a sudden rolled back into the water. And there was another brouhaha about all the things that were going on. He also two-shot 74 in the final round at the Open Championship and finished tied sixth. He's got five wins on the PGA Tour, and he seems to be winning every other year, 15, 17, 19. He's a guy who teased us when he won.
But he's got to win a major. He's got to win a major.
I agree with that. I think he's at a point where he expects to win a major. He's certainly watching all the guys around him, Jordan Spieth and Brooks Koepka, all of his buddies from down there. Dustin, they're all picking up major championships. Justin Thomas. And here's Rickie Fowler, hasn't done that.
Is he just not as good as we think he is?
No, I think he is as good as we think he is. I just think that he hasn't had the win yet. It's kind of like a Phil Mickelson type experience. Phil went a long, long time before he got his first major. And I think Rickie is falling into that situation. He's putting a lot of pressure on himself to perform. And again, if you look at how he performs in these majors on the weekends, it's not great. It just isn't great. He's had a ton of opportunities, and he's got everything that it takes. He's just got to find a way to win. And so, to your point, is he a little bit cavalier? Is he a guy that doesn't show his emotion? Is he a guy who doesn't wear it on his sleeve? Because he is very stoic when he gets into these moments. And what I want to see from him is I want to see Rahm become a little bit more like Fowler, and I want to see Fowler become a little bit more like Rahm. I want to see Fowler give me a little dig down. Give me a little bit, I'm upset that I hit that shot, or I hit a great shot, and a little fist pump. We've seen Tiger do it all the time. Fowler, you can't tell whether he's winning or losing, and that's good for some players, but I don't think it's great for Rickie, and he needs to get a little emotional as he's playing in these events, in my opinion.
All right, here it's 2020. We still talk about the same two guys because they're still the most popular figures in golf. First of all, can Phil Mickelson, who obviously we all root for, and I do unabashedly, all right, is it fair to even believe? Forget what fans think. Forget what Phil thinks. If you talk to Phil, and I sat with him right before the U.S. Open last year, had dinner with him, okay? On Jim's birthday, Jim Nance's birthday, Phil came to the dinner party. We had a dinner party for Jim. Phil's like, I can't wait. I'm winning the U.S. Open this year. Phil says that every year, that he's winning the U.S. Open finally this year. We know that. And then we get nothing. I get the feeling now myself that he can't put together 4 rounds anymore, that he can't keep the drive in play, and that he can't put together 4 rounds anymore. Is that fair, or do you think he still has wins left in his bag?
Well, so I've been around, and you have too, long enough to know you never say no to Phil and you never say no to Tiger, right? So I'm never going to say he can't do it. If you look at Phil Mickelson from a statistical standpoint, and let's just go last year, and these are just hard numbers. He's 165th in strokes gained off the tee. He's 22nd in strokes gained approach the green. He's 73rd in strokes gained around the green, and he's 139th in strokes gained putting. There's not a single statistical
You can't
category.
win that way. You can't win.
You cannot win that way. And what Phil has sort of challenged himself to do is gain speed. And last year, all he wanted to do was, and I use his term here, hit bombs. And he got to where he could. He's 19th on tour.
Yeah, he hits it far, but he can't hit it to the next county.
He doesn't hit it in the same time zone.
Right.
And so what happens is it becomes really difficult to play when you got to curve something under or over or around or through trees and houses and all these different things. And it becomes increasingly difficult to believe that Phil Mickelson is going to contend in a tournament of any type. I'm not just talking about a major. I'm talking about any type. When he has the ability to hit something off the planet. The U.S. Open is at Winged Foot, and of all the U.S. Opens that he did not win, maybe the most egregious
by far. Hey, even after the bad drive, all he had to do was take a drop.
He sat in the interview room at Winged Foot and said, "I'm so stupid." He said, "I'm so stupid." I mean, like, nobody needs to even ask him a question. He couldn't believe that he did what he did.
Ridiculous.
And I think it's ridiculous. And so you're going back to this place and you think about that stuff. And now, again, let's equate this to baseball. Think about Randy Jones or one of those pitchers that pitched late into their career, Nolan Ryan. They start to be able to hit spots. They start to be able to move the ball around a little bit. And even though they've lost a little velocity, they're able to pitch. When you get to and think about Tiger. Tiger has said, look, I'm not the longest anymore. I've got to beat you now with my course management. If you were to give Phil Mickelson a grade in course management, it would be an F.
A Z.
He's got the best wedge game on the planet.
Of all time.
Rewind the videotape 15
of all time.
Years. Of all time. He's in the woods on the 18th hole at Winged Foot. He's got a backdrop on the 18th green. All he has to do is hit it down there to 80 yards. And with his wedge game, he could make it. And he decides to try to hit a cut 3-iron. I mean,
please.
So when I look at all this statistically, there's nothing that
can he win again now, or has time passed him? Look, he's approaching 50 years old.
He's going to be 50 in June. In fact, there's a big debate that I'm having. Is he going to play in the Senior Open?
I don't think he will. Listen, he might play once because they'll pay him a fortune, but he's not going to. They're waiting for him to carry that tour. He's not going to do it. I don't think Tiger or Phil will ever be big players on that tour.
I would agree with that, but I'm talking about the U.S. Senior Open. It's up in
I know.
Rhode Island.
I don't think he'll play in it. I don't think he will.
I think he's going to play the U.S. Open. I'll play the U.S. Senior
But that's
Open.
not a major. He can't count that as a major. It's not. It's not. It's you know what? It's not going to count. It's not going to count.
It might not count, but you know what? It'll make him feel a little bit. Talk to Steve Stricker. Steve Stricker won the U.S. Senior Open, and when you
but he's not Phil Mickelson, though. You know.
I agree with that, but I still think Phil will do it. Anyway, back to this other thing. This is what I think with Phil. I think Phil spent last year trying to figure out how to hit the ball far. He's done that. And now he's got to figure out how to straighten it out. I do think he can straighten it out. I honestly do. And I think Phil's going to have. I think he's going to have a better year than he had last year.
Wouldn't be hard.
Right. That's exactly right. And I do think that he will put himself in a position to win. The question to me is, when you have a season like he's had, you hit a lot of putts and you make a lot of putts that don't have a lot of pressure. Well, when you start straighten things out and you maintain distance with accuracy and you start putting yourself in pressure, now all of a sudden we go back to that question that we asked ourselves 5 years ago. Can Phil make the big putt when he needs to make the putt? Because we're used to seeing him miss those 2, 3, 4, 5 footers when he has to have them. And so what I want, and he's made a lot lately. The question is, can he carry that confidence in that putting forward?
Maybe.
If he does that,
maybe.
I do think he can win. I just don't know that he's winning a major.
All right, here's what I'll say about Tiger's game, and I'm on the other side. I think Tiger was incredibly lucky to win the Masters. I think everything had to fall into place, including 3 guys going in the water. And I think that it's not going to be so easy for him to win big tournaments anymore. I think it's going to be very difficult, and I think the major wins. Now, he might win some tournament. He might go to Torrey Pines and win, or he might go to some place he loves and win Arnie's tournament and win. But I don't see him winning a lot. I don't think he's winning the U.S. Open ever again. I don't think he is going to win a lot of majors. He could win Augusta. I'll give him that. But I just think it's going to be few and far between for Tiger now.
I would tend to agree with you, except that it's Tiger. That's the only curveball to me. I think he has figured out the schedule. I think he understands how he's going to play and the way the schedule lays out. And it's very interesting. He never has to play 3 times in a row, and only a couple of occasions will he play 2 weeks in a row. I think he's also going to get an opportunity to play an event in each major, which is a big deal. Again, provided that he's not dealing with some sort of.
Let me ask you one other thing about Tiger for a second. We're talking about Michael Breed. Are you surprised how well Tiger has reclamated his image? Because he has done a very good job of redoing and reclamating his image as a person.
You know, it's an interesting thing. So I don't know. Has he done that? I think he did it by letting us in a little bit. But frankly, I give a lot of credit to Golf TV. Golf TV has shown us a side of Tiger Woods that we haven't seen. And I think that that's opened up Tiger. I also think that his kids now are coming to, you know, they're no longer these 2 and 3 and 4-year-old things. They are 10, 12, 14 years of age. And all of a sudden they're like playing in golf tournaments and they're real people. And we're starting to see a human side to Tiger Woods that we haven't seen before. He was a cyborg before. I mean, he was the guy that would just go in and he would ruthlessly take you out. You know, we famously remember the story of Rocco Mediate after U.S. Open, where he put a flat in there from Torrey Pines because he wanted to put it in his collection after he lost to Tiger, and just put it in his locker and said, hey, Tiger, will you sign this for me? And Tiger never signed it, and it just had to put back in his locker. It never happened. That was the guy that we're used to seeing. And now all of a sudden we're seeing a guy that's laughing. He's sharing his personality. He's giving us some instruction. He's letting us behind the curtain. It's like a Wizard of Oz kind of experience. And I think Golf TV is really the reason for it. So we're starting to see a side of Tiger that we have not seen in the past.
Plus, Tiger's so big that anything he gives people, they're very happy that he gave it to them because he's Tiger. He's a worldwide figure. Very few people have ever been as big as Tiger Woods in the history of this country in sports. I mean, Tiger Woods is Babe Ruth big. He's Michael Jordan big. He's that big. He's one of the biggest athletes in the history of this country. He is a brand. He's an international figure. He is a world famous person. That's a very rare thing. Very few people are as famous as Tiger Woods.
I think he may be. I mean, Ronaldo, the soccer player, is an incredibly famous player. He's got over 80 million followers on Twitter, which is unthinkable. But Tiger Woods is recognized around the globe.
Worldwide. He's like Muhammad Ali. He's worldwide famous, yes.
That's exactly right. And I don't think we ever saw an athlete of that stature fall the way he fell.
I agree. I agree.
Mike Tyson fell pretty far with all the different things that he ran through, but nobody was at the level of Tiger Woods.
I agree.
Nobody.
And he's made it back pretty well, and he has shown a little more humility and a little sense of humor. Not a lot, but at least a little, like you said, at least a little warmth, which is different. So let me ask you this. So what would you expect out of Tiger's game? Let's just talk golf for a second. What do you expect out of his game this year?
Well, I think Tiger Woods is in a very, very interesting situation. And I think, Tiger is a guy who is motivated in a goal-oriented fashion. That's what he is. And it's a rare time for a guy that's 44 years of age. He's been out on tour since, he played his first tour event when he was 16 years of age. He left college early to get out on the PGA Tour and has been immensely successful, right? But he's got a chance to do something he hasn't had a chance to do, and that is make an Olympic team. And I think that as a result of that goal, that drive, I think that is a huge thing for Tiger Woods. And I also think this is only coming once for him. And so when I look at Tiger Woods and I go, well, what are the one-off experiences that Tiger Woods has had? Well, to me, there was only one other one-off experience that Tiger Woods had that he walked through the door on, and that was in 2001 when he went to the Masters. At the time of playing that Masters, had all three major championships, and he had a chance to win the Tiger Slam. And what's more impressive than the Grand Slam that Bobby Jones won in 1930 is that Bobby Jones won it in a calendar year. And so he only was dealing with it for months. And I'm talking about a few, 2, 3, 4 months. Tiger Woods, after the PGA Championship in August, carries that all the way around through the April next year. And he has this one-off moment. This is the only chance I'm ever going to have to hold all 4 major championships at the same time. And it probably is never going to happen again. We've never seen it in our lifetime. And here comes Tiger Woods with a one-off moment, and he wins it in 2001. Well, now he's got another one-off. And the one-off here is he's never going to have, I don't believe, at age 48, he's going to make an Olympic team. So at age 44, this is his chance. And in order for him to do so, he's got to bypass a couple of people. And in order for him to do that, and the way this schedule lays out, he's going to have a phenomenal first, let's say, 4 months up to Masters. He's going to play 7 events, I think, from the Farmers starting in late January to the Masters, which ends in middle of April. And I think for Tiger Woods to make that Olympic team, of which there's going to be 4 players on the American side, I think that he's going to have to pick up at least 1 win, and he could do it at Augusta. I think you mentioned this earlier at API. I think at Bay Hill he's going to win Bay Hill personally. And so I think in order for him to reach the Olympics, which I think he's going to do, he has to have a win, which I think he's going to do, and I think it's going to happen at Arnie's Place.
All right, let me ask you about the 4 players now, including the big 3. But the first one is Spieth. The question is this: will Spieth ever become Spieth again?
I don't know. You know, that's a really hard question. Can he remake himself? Can he dial in that almost childlike mindset of just hitting balls to targets and overcoming the stuff? I don't know. The ball striking was last year. It was better, and it got better after, quite frankly, after the PGA Championship. He really kind of found something. But at the same time, it's a long ways for him to get back to where he was. Think about it. He basically created a Hall of Fame career in about a year and a half. I don't know that anybody's been able to do that, and I don't think Jordan Spieth is going to get back to that level. I do think Jordan Spieth, he's gotten married. I think he's got a direction now. I think, you know, we're going to say he'll have a family or start a family. He's 43rd in the official World Golf rankings. I think that he's a guy who will, you know, work his way back inside the top 20, maybe even inside the top 10. But the tour has gotten harder and harder and harder to be successful. And the other thing about Jordan Spieth that I worry about with him, and one of the things that is sort of a mental hurdle with Jordan, is he always seems to make, when he makes a bogey, and I said this to you before about when people play badly, when he makes a bogey, he makes, or a bad score, it's a double or a triple or a quadruple. He doesn't just make like a bogey. When he goes bad, he goes really bad. And that's something that we've noticed all year long this past year. When he went bad, he went really bad. And so I look at Jordan, he has to overcome that. He has to get these bad holes down to bogeys, and he's got to then make the bad holes smaller and smaller. In other words, having 1 or 2 bogeys in a round instead of 4 bogeys and 2 double bogeys. It's really difficult to contend in a major championship when you know at some point that a double or a triple or a quad is going to show up on your card.
We're previewing 2020 with Michael Breed, Golf Digest, Sirius, of course. You hear him all the time, previewing all the majors. All right, DJ, you can't fault his career, but here's the thing. he doesn't have enough Masters for enough majors for the way he has dominated the sport. He has been at the top of the sport. He has been number one. He's given away. He 3-putted away a major. He grounded his club and gave away a major. So we know he's given away 2 majors right there. This guy, as we know, like anytime there's a tournament, I'm thinking about who's going to win it. You start with, well, DJ should win it. Now, who do you think is going to win it? Okay, that's that. I mean, that's basically it. When he, 100%. I mean, the guy hits the ball down the middle, 350 yards, then hits the knock shot, perfect, right on the green, and then 3 putts or 2 putts. Never makes a putt. The guy's a terrible putter, considering how good the rest of his game is. But he putts well enough to still win because he's on every green. He's putting for birdie every hole. So, what about DJ? And can he ever have that crazy year in your mind where he just completely takes everything home?
Well, it's an interesting thing. So you look at Dustin Johnson last year, and you kind of he was not really the topic of conversation last year, even though he made $5.5 million. He won at the World Golf Championships, Mexico Championship, and he destroyed the field down there. Had 2 second places, 10 top 25s, and 7 top 10s. It was a pretty good year for him. And let's also forget that where his friend Brooks Koepka did what I thought was one of the coolest things, defending his PGA Championship. He had defended the U.S. Open the year prior. Now he's coming back defending the PGA Championship, and he does. Dustin Johnson makes a little bit of a push, kind of stretches it, takes that to a 1-shot lead on the back 9 before he makes a couple of clumsy mistakes with a couple of holes to go. He finishes second in the PGA Championship, and he finished tied second at the Masters. As a lot of people had him with as good a chance as there was to win at Augusta. I look at Dustin and I go, he's going to win. He's won every single year since 2008. It's been an incredibly impressive career that he's had. Hall of Fame career, no doubt about it.
He should have been better, though.
He should have been better. That's 100% correct. So you go back to this other thing and you go, do you think that Dustin Johnson has that drive, that will to just walk through and win things? Or do you think it's kind of like, play to your personality, and it's kind of, he whistles along, picks up his win, makes his $5 million, does his off the golf course
He's
stuff,
like the dumb blonde who's a movie star. He's like that, people, I mean, maybe he's not as dumb as people depict him as being dumb as a brick and stuff like that. I don't know him. I never met him. But the point is, he doesn't play smart out there. It seems like he has no attention span, but he has all the talent, all the physical talent that a golfer could ever have.
I don't think anybody argues with his athletic ability. I mean, his athletic ability is
off the charts.
I don't want to say it's unparalleled.
It's close.
It's definitely off the charts, particularly for the PGA Tour. I mean, that's a guy. Think about this: the year before, he made $8.5 million, 3 wins. It was crazy. The year that he had it.
The guy hits the ball laser straight and hits it as far as you could possibly hit it, and hits it laser straight all the time.
And cuts it. He like the ball is never out of play. He has everything that it takes. The one question that we all have is he willing to put in the time that he has to put in? And I've had conversations with people that know Dustin, and they have said the same. He might tell you he's going to show up to the practice tee at 9:00. And you know what? Where's Dustin at 9:00? You think about the greatest players in any sport of all time.
They all work hard. They all work hard.
The discipline and the drive is unmatched. You've been around it forever.
They all play. They all work harder than anybody else. They all do.
That's exactly right. Nobody outworks them. And Dustin, you can't say that for Dustin. And so, if he had that, would we be looking at a guy that was threatening double-digit majors? Well, probably. But right now, we're just trying to get, another one. And we're hoping he gets another one.
Well, let me get to the next guy now, because I think you guys, all of you in golf who are professional, and I understand you all love his talent, and I think the international guys do it worse, you all fall over Rory. And you talk about how great he is off the tee and how talented he is, except none of you all tiptoe around the fact that he is a choker as a putter. He can't make, if he could make putts, he would have 4 more majors. I mean, the guy doesn't make putts he has to make despite hitting the ball about as well as anybody could ever hit it. Another guy who just doesn't make enough putts, but he's had a great career.
He's had a great career, and I will tell you, I think much the same way as Jordan Spieth's career, to me, the recent career boils down to one shot that was hit. The same thing, in my opinion, can be said for this major championship quest of Rory McIlroy, and it boils down to the back nine at Augusta National when he had that tournament in his hands.
And he missed a putt from 2 feet to take the thing up and take it away, and he missed the putt from 2 feet away.
And it's frightening. And you look at this, and I think that he's carried that with him. And by the way, every single year, and you know this well, Mike, every single year what we all talk about is, hey, Rory's got a chance to win the career Grand Slam. Can Rory win the career Grand Slam? And you know where he has to do it to win a career Grand Slam? Right there in Augusta, Georgia. And so you start thinking about this guy. Can he win in Augusta? And once you start off with, I've got to show up at Augusta, I've got to make this. Don't forget, he shot 80. He shot 80 in that final round. He bounced back, by the way, in 2011 and won the U.S. Open at Congressional down there in D.C. But I think that's the thing that is really holding Rory back is it's hard for him to let go of that moment. I talked.
Also, has Rory has he succumbed to the good life? He's made comments about, well, you know what? I have a $20 million jet. I hop on that. I go home. I'm okay. You don't want to hear that from players. You don't. I understand he's rich. I understand he's successful. You don't want to hear that. You never heard that from Jack Nicklaus. You never heard that from Arnold Palmer. You don't want to hear that from these guys.
Well, and I think, look, frankly, I don't think that necessarily is what the problem is for Rory. I think there's something about the European mindset over the American mindset where no matter how good you think you are, no matter what the world golf rankings say, no matter any of that stuff, you still feel like you're inferior to the American player. It's just the way it is. That's what I see. And so I don't think that necessarily falls into play. What I think falls into play here is that you've got a guy who every single year there's the pressure of winning a major championship, and it starts right off the bat. It's not, I think he's going to win a major. You've got to win that major to win a career Grand Slam. And as he goes through all these things, that is at the forefront of his mind every single year. Now, he's coming off of his best year from a statistical standpoint that he's ever had. I mean, it was, the PGA Tour voted him Player of the Year. Is he able to rise to the occasion?
And he shouldn't have been Player of the Year.
I don't think
Brooks
so
should have
either.
been Player of the Year.
I think that was a popularity contest.
They don't like Brooks. They don't like him.
They don't like Brooks.
And the bottom line is Brooks is the best player now by a lot. Because let's be honest, Michael, you know this. It's still about the majors, and I understand. Here's why they don't like Brooks, because Brooks doesn't show up enough in the other tournaments. He doesn't care enough about the other tournaments, and the other guys say, if you don't care about the tournament, the PGA Tour, week in and week out, we are not going to give you all the accolades. He only cares about the majors, but that's how everyone's been brought up, and that's how everyone's been told to keep score from Jack to Tiger, and this guy right now in the majors is dominating the sport like no one's business.
I totally agree with that. And if you look at the season that Brooks Koepka had last year in the major championships, he didn't finish worse than fourth.
He should have been Player of the Year by a mile. It was a joke.
By a mile. And he was, by the way. The PGA of America gave him the Player of the Year, and it wasn't a vote.
And I understand they want him to play in Memphis, and they want him to play in Phoenix, but this guy cares about winning majors. That's what he lives for, and he's there. He answers the bell every major.
And he's got a chip on his shoulder, too, Mike, which I love. I love the fact that the guy, in fact, I think the best thing that happened to Brooks Koepka was not getting Player of the Year because he's got now that chip back again.
And let's be honest, plays better. His play right now is higher in his sport than, other than LeBron James. I don't think anybody's playing, and maybe Mike Trout, I don't think anybody's playing as high a level as Brooks is. Brooks is dominating in the big event. He is dominating his sport.
And that's the problem, is that it's a PGA Tour thing, and he's done it in the majors, which, quite frankly, you and I care about, and the PGA Tour and the PGA Tour players trying to support the PGA Tour,
right.
And the PGA Tour wants to go, well, you know what? The most important thing is, how did you do? Did you win the Tour championship?
Right, he doesn't care about that stuff. And you know what? But he's right, and they're wrong. And sorry, this is how Jack, who built your tour, did it. This is how Tiger, who built your tour, did it. And this is how Brooks does it. I know he doesn't play the game. I know he doesn't. And maybe he needs to, even if he doesn't want to win it, he needs to show up at a couple of more tournaments. I understand they need him to do that. I understand that. But when he dominates the way he is dominating these majors, you have to give him his due, and they haven't. They've done a bad job with Brooks Koepka.
I agree. And here's the other thing. Let's not forget this. Remember, he said last year he doesn't really even care about winning events on the PGA Tour.
That's what he said.
Practice.
That's what he said, yes.
And all of a sudden they're going to go, oh, man, you know what? You're bringing our tour down. There's no way that you're going to win our Player of the Year thing. And I'm not saying that there was any sort of,
I'll say it. There absolutely
anything,
is. They absolutely didn't want to give him it because he won't
didn't
go
want
play
to
in
give it to
Walla
him.
Walla, Washington, or won't play in the Oshkosh Inn. They want him to treat the tour right, and he basically says, I'm not winning this week. I don't care this week.
And by the way, if that becomes the mentality, you can play your way. If you think about this, you could play a really nice schedule, make a pile of money if you're Brooks Koepka, just playing major championships and kind of playing around the world in various tournaments on sponsors exemptions.
I actually heard a guy say on TV, Mike, and I'm not going to say who it was because I don't remember which guy it was. It might have been Brandel, but I'm not sure it was. Who said, you know what, he doesn't win enough other tournaments. Wait a second. Your job is to dominate the majors. Now we're going to knock a guy because he dominates the majors, but he doesn't win enough tournaments otherwise? Give me a break.
It's incredible. Tied fourth at the Open Championship, second at the U.S. Open, first at the PGA, and tied second at the Masters. And that's not a good enough year for you.
Come on. I mean, look what he's done. Look what he's done in the last 12 majors. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And by the way, not only that, but he's defended two of the majors. He backed up his U.S. Open with a win, and he backed up his PGA with a win. And, no, you know what? Let's give it to Rory. I'm like you. I think that was absolutely preposterous.
Ridiculous.
Not only that, but
ridiculous.
They included one of the wins of Rory McIlroy's in the Tour Championship, which was, I think, a net event. I look at the Tour Championship, you're spotting people's shots.
Give me a break. I mean, it was a joke. And you know what? Now they got him angry again, so watch out when it comes to the majors this year. And I'm telling you right now, who's going to bet against this guy when Augusta comes your way? He's there every time.
Every single
I still
time.
don't understand why he put now. Listen, I've asked you, and I still can't. I'd love to go ask Brooks. I can't understand why that guy, with his game and his strength, put that ball in the water on 12.
Look, there was a part of me that thought that there was somebody out there because they just wanted Tiger to win, paying off people to dump a water into the water. Everybody did. Molinari
hasn't been the same since he put the ball in the water.
I know. It's incredible. But you know what? It is what it is. I think that shot will affect the Jordan Spieth. It won't affect the Brooks.
It affected Molinari. He's been terrible since he put it in the water.
I know. This guy, he's immersed. It will not.
And I got to give you credit because you saw it before anybody else. You came on my show, and we're talking with Michael Breed, of course. You came on my show 4 years ago. I said, who's the next guy? And you said, no one's going to believe this. Nobody is going to – they're going to think I'm nuts. The next great player is Brooks Koepka. And I'm like, what? And the next great player is Brooks Koepka. You hit. What did you see in this guy?
Well, you know what? I mean, look, it's just like anything else. You go out, if you go out to a football field right now and you watch kids playing high school, you can see who the one that moves well, who understands the game, who whatever. You can spot talent. You've been around it enough. You know what it looks like.
Yeah, but there's other guys that you saw something special in this guy that a lot of people hadn't seen. That's for sure.
That guy, I'll tell you what it is. It's Mike Singletary's eyes. That's what I saw in Koepka. You look at Singletary was one of those guys that was the classic shot that we were used to seeing, particularly when the Giants were good in the in the middle 80s.
Yep.
And there's Singletary, and it was like his eyes would go right through you, and that's exactly where Koepka, what I saw out of Koepka. The other thing is the determination. He went over to play over in Europe, and this guy was absolutely steadfast in his determination to play successfully on the PGA Tour. A lot of people had just kind of cast him aside. He never doubted himself. And every step he took was by purpose. He sought out the right coaches. He's found the right moves, and he's always had the belief. And quite frankly,
Let me ask you this about him, though, Michael. Let me ask you, because you're around the tour every week. Now that he has won as he has, now that he has gotten wealthy as he has, he's gotten rich. There's no question. He has, he's got everything. He's a big star. He has the money. He has the fame. He has the glory. Has he become more civilized? Has he become more acclimated to the tour? Is his relationship better with administrators? Is it better with players, or is it still the same frosty relationship?
I would say this, and this is just the way he doesn't care.
He doesn't care. That's
Brooks
it.
Koepka doesn't.
So he's just a loner and he runs his own deal. Is that basically it?
That's exactly right. And he is looking for people to disrespect him. And by if you look at what goes on, you have all these different players on the PGA Tour now that everybody's looking at, and everybody's giving all this respect to all these players, and everybody, for some reason, they want to look past Brooks Koepka. Maybe the swing.
I think they're jealous of him, first of all, and I think they fear him right now. I think they're afraid of Brooks Koepka right now.
And so what I think happens with Brooks is he's looking to have a chip on his shoulder. He's found it this year. He'll find another reason next year after he has a great year this year. They'll still disrespect him, and he'll go out there and he'll do it. The PGA Tour as a whole basically made a statement to Brooks Koepka that said, we disrespect you, and as a result, go and do what you got to do. And he goes, okay, that's the way you want to play it. I did it to you last year. Welcome to 2020 because I'm going to do it again.
Is his coaching team a good team?
He believes in them. He trusts them.
Okay.
And, when you trust, look, Jeff Pierce, I think, is one of the best coaches when it comes to putting and short game out there. He's a fantastic mind, and I think he's great. Claude Harmon is a very, very good coach. I think he's got a guy that he's working with on his physical stature and the food that he's eating. I mean, they're looking at everything nowadays. You're talking about, it's like NASCAR.
Right.
You're looking at how's this thing move. He's got all that stuff figured out. What I'm hoping to see is how he does this week. He's just coming back into the game now, playing overseas, and I'm going to be interested to see how he responds. How's that knee working out? The only thing that I think is going to derail Koepka this year is injury. And you know what? He backed out of the President's Cup as a result of the knee. So I'm a little leery of that. I want to find out, how is that responding? But absent of that, I don't think there's anything else that can hold him back.
Has he changed at all from what you can tell? Is he the same guy he was before the fame and the wealth and everything else?
I think he's the same. He's got we call him Chip. He's the same guy with a chip on his back, and I think I don't think he cares about the money. It's a rare thing. Nowadays you hear Rory McIlroy and he goes, "Well, I've made all this money. I'm going to be fine." Koepka doesn't care about the money. What he cares about is major championships. He doesn't care about PGA Tour events. What he cares about is major championships. And by the way, if you could stand outside and look at his career right now, if you're Dustin Johnson, would you trade your career for Koepka's career?
Yes.
And all absolutely.
Yes.
That's exactly right. And now all of a sudden, here comes a guy that nobody was thinking about. Everybody was thinking Jason Day, Jordan Spieth, Dustin Johnson.
He's better than all of them.
Brooks Koepka?
Better than all of them.
Yeah, he is.
Better than all of them. He's on his way.
Agree.
When they write the story of the sport, Brooks Koepka is going to be the best player of this generation. After Tiger, it's going to be Koepka.
It's pretty impressive what he's done, and I think he's going to continue to do more of the same, and I think he's going to continue to be just as disrespected as he's been both by the players on the tour and by the media itself.
So right now, as you look at this year's majors, now we got obviously, where's the U.S. Open this year?
At Winged Foot.
Oh, that's right, it's here. And where's the PGA this year?
PGA is out west in San Francisco, and I'm drawing a blank on the.
Okay, so it's out west. All right, so it's out west. So all right, so you got Winged Foot, which is obviously a good test. So when you look at the year, Koepka won. Who do you look for to be right there in the? Do you look at the big three? Do you look at it, DJ, Rory, Koepka, and that's your three, or do you like someone else to be in the mix this year in the majors?
No. I think Rory's going to have. I think Rory's going to have a good year. I think he's going to be there. I think Jon Rahm is the guy who's going to make.
Jon Rahm's talented enough to win any tournament. There's no question.
Yep, I think he's going to.
You know what I like about Rahm is he's got power and finesse, both. He's got both. And he's got fire. He's just got to control himself. He's got to stop throwing clubs. He's got to stop throwing clubs.
And so I think you're going to see Jon Rahm in the mix here. I think he's another guy. Who, Rahm to me.
You know what Rahm reminds me of? He reminds me of a guy, if you combine Seve and Daly, you got Rahm.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a fiery way about him. And I think he's the thing I would say about Rahm that's a little, he's much more organized in his thought and what he does on a daily basis.
Big star because he's got personality and his game has a real flair to it. It really does. He's an exciting player, Rahm. He really is. The fans get a kick out of Rahm. He's an exciting player.
By the way, that PGA Championship is at TPC Harding Park. It's in San Francisco.
I'm not familiar. Is that an interesting course?
It is an interesting golf course, and it's a course that the players have gone to before. It's just the weather in San Francisco that time of year can be
very tough in the summer there. Very tough in the summer.
Exactly right. And so you worry about like for Tiger.
A lot of rain. You
worry about the what and cold. So you kind of that dampness.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's one of the things that I worry about for.
You know what Mark Twain said? Worst winter I ever spent was one summer in San Francisco.
That's exactly right.
Thanks, Michael. Great job this year. We'll talk to you along the way. Thanks very much.
I look forward to it, too. Thank you.
Michael Breed, Golf Digest Sirius. On this Wednesday evening, welcome to The Fan. And obviously, the story that keeps percolating deals with the sign stealing scandal and what that means for all parties. Now we know what's going on with the Red Sox as they now look for a new manager, and we await baseball's decision on Cora. But really, it's what's going on with Carlos Beltran, and you got people calling for his dismissal. Here's the one thing people are missing. Whether or not Beltran was the architect of the sign stealing, involved in it, built it with other players, whatever he did, he was not in a position of authority in Houston. They could have shut it down. All they had to do as a general manager, owner, or manager is say, hey, we're not dealing with this. Put it away, Beltran, knock it off. It's over with. He is not in a position of authority. He did not run the franchise. He did not run the team. He was not a coach. He was a player. No player is going to ever be implicated or punished for using information that is garnered by the team in terms of signs. It's been going on in baseball for 70 years. It is not going to happen. Beltran was a player. Now, unless in this whole thing, and that's why the Mets have stayed silent, unless in this whole thing something comes forward that shows that Beltran had some greater role and in some way did something where he has to be punished. If that happens, the Mets will have to move. My understanding is, and I have this on good authority, that it was not an issue when the Mets talked to him about managing the team. This sign-stealing thing had not gotten hot yet. It was not an issue. Remember, he was not in a position of authority. When the commissioner hit the Astros, he did not touch Beltran. He mentioned Beltran, who is no longer a player. He mentioned them, but he didn't do anything against Beltran. He didn't in any way sanction Beltran. Beltran was not in a position of authority. And then Beltran became an assistant to the Yankees while Cora went to the Red Sox. So, wait a second. Beltran was with the Yankees last year. Why didn't the Yankees talk to him about what happened in 2017 if it was so important? They were making claims in 17. Why didn't they sit Beltran down now that he was an employee and ask him what was going on in 18? So the bottom line is he wasn't with Cora anymore. Now, he might have been an architect of this. It sounds like he was. But unless baseball is going to come forward, and that would mean some other player coming up with some more information that is damning to Beltran. If that happens, Beltran's out. If it doesn't, I don't think this is going to be an issue. Now, you want to tell me Beltran, when he was first asked about it, lied to the media? Well, you know what? A million guys have lied to the media about a million things. That could get him criticized. Big deal. That will blow over. The bottom line, though, is the Mets hired a manager. It was not an issue for them. They were dealing with a guy who just left the Astros and went to work for the Yankees. Why was it okay he worked for the Yankees in 18? And then the Yankees almost hired him as manager. So all of a sudden now the Mets have to jettison him? Nonsense. Unless there's more to the story. Now, when this all clears and we have everything done and the Mets can call up the commissioner and say, are you done? And they say, we're done. Nothing else is going to happen to anybody else. Then it's going to be time for the Mets to speak about the sign stealing. That goes for owner. That goes for Brody. That goes for Beltran. Beltran's going to have to see how far he wants to go in saying what his role was in this whole thing. But then to me, he's got a clean slate as far as being the manager of the Mets. That's it. Beltran has not been sanctioned, and he shouldn't be sanctioned because he was a player. And there is no player who is not going to take that information and use it. Now, again, was he a mastermind? Sounds like he was. But again, all the manager had to do was tell him to shut it down. All the general manager had to do was tell him to shut it down, and then they shut it down. He is not in a position where he can mandate that the team is going to use that system to steal signs. He's not in a position of authority with the Astros. Therefore, he's not culpable. Now, maybe you want to put this stigma on Beltran. Go ahead. And maybe you're upset that he lied to the media. Really? Stand all the guys in line from every coach who's lied to the media a million times, every owner who's lied to the media a million times, every player who has lied to the media a million times. Okay? Let's get real here. That's not the real world. Okay? He's not going to get fired because he lied to the media. And my understanding, and I have this on good authority, is that it was not an issue when they hired him as manager. Now, does that mean they haven't had conversations about it? I'm sure they have. But unless he is going to get hit, and that's why the Mets have stayed quiet, unless he is going to get hit by baseball. And if he does, the Mets have to go shop for a new manager. Unless that happens, and I don't think it will, because he wasn't with Cora in Boston, and he wasn't hit originally on anything that happened. You knew the players weren't getting punished, nor should they be punished. And I agree with what Bobby Valentine said. This should have been shut down by baseball many, many years ago. Remember, there were accusations about electronic espionage used in stealing signs in baseball all the way back to 1951. It was in a book about the Giants and the Dodgers, as we all know. I interviewed Ralph Branker about it. We kind of dismissed it because, hey, how big a deal is it? It's still sign stealing. And again, baseball has not for 1 second tried, nor should they, tried to say how big a factor it is in whether a team wins and loses. And for the Yankees to act sanctimonious here, I don't care if it's Teixeira, CC Sabathia. Did the Yankees want to give back the home runs that were hit by players that won games in the postseason who were on steroids? Or the games that were pitched by pitchers who were on steroids? Of course not. They want that dismissed. Okay? We know that happened. We know for a fact that happened. The Yankees had more steroid guys than anybody. So the bottom line is you can't act holier than thou when your own house isn't in order. So let's get past that. Unless there's more to this Beltran story, I think maybe he got a little dirty here. Let's see how he does as manager of the Mets. And I don't think the Mets have to change managers. Now, how Beltran's going to deal with the New York media could be, in some ways, a rough go for him based on the fact that he already lied about this story. That's up to him. He can come as clean as he wants. He can get as difficult as he wants. Let's see. He's got to deal with the media on a daily basis. It's part of being a manager in New York. But remember, the most important requisite for success for a manager or a coach in New York in dealing with the fans and the media is winning. If you win, you can get away with a lot. If you lose, you can get away with very, very little. As far as who becomes the Red Sox manager, you're hearing all kinds of fan favorites and everything else. I can't see it being somebody on Cora's staff. Doesn't make any sense. The staff's tainted. I can't get somebody who's on the staff. How about an ex-player? Are they tainted too? So who knows who gets the job? It's obviously a coveted job, but they're going to go through, it looks like, a rebuilding phase here now. And I think you have the Astros reeling a little bit from what happened. The Red Sox reeling a lot by a lot of things. What it does is it opens up for the Yankees to be a very heavy favorite, which they've already been installed as because of the Cole signing. But now an even bigger favorite because the teams that they had to deal with at the top in the American League part have been lessened. There's no question. But before Yankee fans get sanctimonious, go back through your history and think about Whitey Ford doctoring baseballs and think about what went on with Jeffrey Mayer. I didn't hear anybody, you know what? I didn't hear anybody wanted to give back that game. Or the games where Yankee stars homered who were steroid users or got big outs who were steroid users on their way to titles. Okay? If we're going to deal with this, we'll deal with that also. So let's just call it a pass and move on. Win your championships on the field. It sounds like stupid and really obnoxious whining to be trying to take back titles that you already lost. Okay? Nobody does that. You lost it fair and square. Whether or not they had an edge, like we said, up in Foxborough, their victories may have been tainted a little bit. They've never been invalidated back after this. Sad to see Luke Kuechly call it a career, but you know what? I think you're going to see more players, prominent players, at a young age, call it a career. We've seen it happen a couple of times, the most notable, of course, being Luck in Indianapolis, but his injuries were so rare and so severe that I think he did the right thing as a very bright young man from a guy who made a good amount of money, and I understand it cut short what would have been a storied career. But still, he made his mark on the NFL. He showed everybody he could play in the NFL, and he made plenty of money, over $100 million in his time in the NFL. He needs to be healthy. Kuechly was a wonderful player. He was the foundation player for the Carolina Panthers, but he suffered in really a large number of severe concussions in playing the position the way he did. He was as fierce a hitting and as tough a linebacker as you've seen, as the leader of that Carolina defense. Had at least 3 major and as many as 2 or 3 other incidents, but at least 3 major concussions in his time. And when you play to the age of 28 and play in college and then play as he did in the NFL, you are going to basically sustain so many hits to the head that the idea that you won't be suffering from some form of an issue with your brain in the years to come is probably very small. He's 28 years old. He's made his mark on the NFL. Why stay and take a risk that he doesn't have problems with dementia or problems with the side issues of CTE-induced injuries in his early 50s or even in his late 40s. Maybe that'll stay away now until his late 60s or hopefully even into his late 70s. Maybe he'll have a rich, full life out of this, and maybe he doesn't even have any problems at all. We see the players who do, we see the players that don't. But he's given a lot to the game. He was a player that played with a reckless abandon. He played tough. He played smart. Wonderful player, Luke Kuechly. Okay? A player that you could have a great deal of respect for. And I respect his decision to walk away at 28. And I think in the years to come, you will see players especially players who mix it up the way a Luke Kuechly did, say, you know what, I've had enough at this point of his career. Football is a violent game. It's not a contact sport. It's a high collision sport. Incredibly gifted athletes in the prime of their lives, honed to a razor's edge, strong, big, quick, colliding, play after play. Now, the sport has been cut down a lot. They don't hit during the week much. They don't hit during training camp much. They have made it as safe as they can. They've taken away a lot of the stuff that went on that have caused sustained head injuries. So they have made advancements in this area, no question. But I still think you're going to see more players say goodbye like Kuechly did at the age of 28. Listen, he didn't play 2 years in the NFL. The average player, you know how long he plays in the NFL? 2.8 years. The guys who stay around are the good ones. The guys who stay around are the guys who are very talented. They're the decade players. They're the 15-year players. Kuechly played 8 years in the NFL at a very, very high level. That's a long time. And when you play the position he played and play with the reckless abandon that he played with, well, you know what? 8 years is a very, very long time. And I say to him, get out while the getting is still good. Hopefully it is. Hopefully he hasn't sustained the kind of damage that's going to come back and haunt him in his early mid-years. He's 28 years old. He'd like to have 50 good years. I hope he's blessed with that and not 10 or 15. But he was a terrific player to watch, and he gave a lot to the sport. I know a lot of people are happy to see that Paul Tagliabue especially was named as a Hall of Famer. He was kind of the commissioner that resided in the shadows of the legendary Pete Rozelle. He may not have looked for the limelight. He wasn't a media darling. He was a basketball player of some renown who was a lawyer first and then obviously a leader and a commissioner. But he did a lot of things for this league that have been kind of bypassed and swept under the rug because he was there in the beginning when everything started to turn when it came to the injuries and dealing with that factor. You know what? Football, for a lot of years, into the years and the tenure of this commissioner, took a lot of time to change. They did a lot of discrediting of good information. They were not quick to make these moves. But look, luckily, and fortunately for the players, they've lived and learned. But when you look at the balance and you go back over his tenure, he made some very, very significant and very underrated contributions to the sport. So the fact that he was recognized here is a distinct positive. And you know what? I think rightly so. And I know the people who really worked alongside him, and I know a couple of them very well, thought very highly about him as a person and about his contributions. And now those haven't gone unnoticed. So congratulations to the commissioner. I know it means a lot to his family. So congratulations to Tagliabue on getting into the Hall of Fame. You know, you don't realize until you watch these guys go through it. Years later, the Hall of Fame has an incredible impact on players, on coaches, on anybody who's ever been in the game, because what happens is they're out of the game before they get this one final accolade. And in the years out of the game, and they step away from it, and there's no longer interviews, and there's no longer applause, and there's no longer the daily grind, and the things that fame and all the things that go with their daily ritual. When they step away from that, and they've had those years, and now they come up for the Hall of Fame, I can't tell you how surprised I've been that people who never cared if they won Coach of the Year or what people thought of them. They just thought about doing their job and winning games or playing and doing their best. But years later, how touched they are. And to a man, guys that I've never seen be sentimental, crying over getting into the Hall of Fame, moved, genuinely moved. And I've seen them, when they first don't get in, be moved to bitter disappointment when they don't get in. Players, coaches, people that I thought would never even care if they got in or not. But when they're out for a while and they become the fabric of the league and they become the history of the league, they want to be remembered. And that step into that Hall of Fame, where only 1% of the people who ever are a part of that league on any level go. 1%. When you make the Hall of Fame, you become part of the history of the league. No one can ever take that away. So that's why no one ever is not thrilled, overwhelmed when they get into the Hall of Fame. And you saw it this week. I happened to be watching when Bill Cowher got his announcement and how overcome he was. How Jimmy Johnson, a guy you would never think of being overwhelmed, was overwhelmed when it was announced this past week he got into the Hall of Fame. And I've seen it now time and again. Players being so upset to anger when they didn't get in, bitterly disappointed, saying they were never going to look again, they were never going to pay attention again, and then thrilled the next year when they rushed to the phone and were told they were in the Hall of Fame. So you can't in any way understand how much that means to every person who gets in. And it is that special because, now, long after all of us are gone, you're going to have that piece of history. You're going to be in that place where there's only a couple of people, only the guys who made that big a difference in the game. And that's why every year when you watch that unfold on Super Bowl week, or any time it goes on in any of these sports, you see how overcome and how genuinely moved players are, or executives are, or coaches are, by now being told that you were one of the special ones. You were one of the greats. You're now part of in this case, the National Football League Hall of Fame. Now you're part of the league's history. You've now been woven completely into the fabric. And I know that no matter who it is, it means a great deal. And it is a very special day. The real last, because remember, you've been out for a while now. It's that last moment, that last sports moment that you're going to have. So it's a final one, but also it is probably the most joyous one and the most meaningful one that any of these people ever have, whether they're Super Bowl heroes, Super Bowl MVPs, league MVPs, legendary coaches, commissioners, whatever. It means a lot to be in the Hall of Fame. We'll see you tomorrow.